Wow, nice intro, Rudy. Where'd you get that intro? The intro store? When you or I think of video games, one of the first names to come to our minds is Valve. I don't even need to tell you that. You think of them on a daily basis, like a toddler attracted to Skibidi Toilet compilations. Ever since the release of the original Half-Life in 1998, they have, impressively, managed to remain on top of the video games industry when it comes to PC gaming, which, not to diminish their success, is kind of a big deal. The sheer mass Valve has is comparable to that one Family Guy episode where Peter has a gravitational pull. But what about the times that Valve just didn't work? And I don't mean the early days of Valve, because their debut title Half-Life was a critical and commercial success in every way imaginable and revolutionized the FPS genre, basically striking a very thick wall between pre-Half-Life, Doom, Quake, and post-Half-Life, everything else. I mean the times when Valve just didn't quite hit the nail on the head like we're used to seeing from them. After all, it's not every time that anyone can succeed at whatever they do. Despite the praises I gave to them just now, Valve is not immune to making bad decisions. It's just that they made so many good ones that it's often easy to overlook or just not know about the time, as Valve reminded us they are indeed human after all. Today I want to take a look at Valve's releases that just didn't quite live up to their developer's name. Both because I haven't played many of them and because I think it's mad fucking funny that the same company that made Half-Life also made... When creating a list like this, I believe it's important to establish what we're even talking about. In a broader sense, something flopping or being a flop simply means that a given thing failed or was almost entirely unsuccessful in comparison to either its predecessor, its successor, or the environment it's in altogether. Not all flops can be really considered entirely deserved. Mars Needs Moms is Disney's biggest box office flop, and rightfully so. The Super Mario Bros. Movie from 1993 is shit, so on and so on. But on the other hand, Nichijou's anime adaptation bombed in Japan, but is now considered one of the best anime of the last decade. Rightfully so, that show fucking rocks. The Iron Giant is considered one of the greatest animated movies ever designed, despite barely meeting half its budget in the box office, so on and so forth. So with that in mind, what do we make of Ricochet? Well, it's an interesting case because despite being the first game I thought of when composing my list, I have actually never played Ricochet, only having it on my Steam account because of the Valve Complete Pack, like I suppose most people do. Someone's first impression of Ricochet's Steam page is that it's one of the worst kept things they have ever laid eyes upon. Clearly a sign of how Valve doesn't care about the game, but that couldn't be more of a misconception. More or less. See, Ricochet was released in 2000, smack dab between Half-Life Opposing Force and Blue Shift, which rapidly earned the reputation of being Valve's stupid fat goose. But what I want to take from this is that at the time, Steam wasn't a thing yet, as it would only be released in September 2003. As such, it was common for Valve's games to not have anything in the way of promotional videos and such, which stands to this day as Half-Life, Team Fortress Classic, Half-Life Opposing Force, Ricochet, Counter-Strike, Half-Life Blue Shift, and Day of Defeat all have only gameplay images in their respective Steam pages. Although Half-Life had trailers? Wait, a lot of these games had trailers. Valve, stupid! So, in order to understand just what made these games so unappealing to the masses at the turn of the century, I installed it and played it. Now, I might see it says play for 4 minutes, but... Shut up. Opening the game, we're greeted by that classic late 90s, early 2000s Valve screen, with 4 cranking options, one of which looks much more enticing than the other 3. A brief look at the available servers reveals what we are all expecting, honestly. Whoever hosts these perpetually empty servers out there so people like me can join once, make a video on and never play the game again, honestly, God bless you. I'd kiss you on the lips if I could. If I wasn't married to the grind. Ooh. However, as alluring as getting into Miguel X413 server might look like, all you gotta do to change my mind is that I'd be getting 300 ping while doing that, so no thanks, let's try out an empty server. Loading into the first map out of a grand total of 3, you're greeted with this playing field looking like it's lifted straight from Tron, and immediately one thing catches my eye, the inability to jump.
Sick. There's no jumping. Oh,
good one past me. It'll make sense as to why in a moment, but really it was a bit hard to get used to, especially when, I don't know, every other Gold Source game has jumping in one way or another. Just a hunch. But apart from that little change, you gotta get used to, Ricochet's gameplay is, honestly kind of fun. I mean, at least it looks like it, cause the basic motion here is shooting out these neon discs which bounce. You fucking get it now? And using them to knock players out or fucking behead them. You get a total of 3 before running out and they come back to you after either bouncing 3 times or disappearing into the void. These glowing frisbees are the only method of attack you have, and they can be upgraded with these floating medals here, allowing for freezing, triple shots, fast shots, the works. Speaking of disappearing into the void, this game is kinda grim. Like, where are we? Where is this place? Is this eternal punishment for my past misdoings? What's going on here? Well, surprisingly, that question is slightly rhetorical, because I know the answer. Supposedly. See, Apparently Ricochet has lore. According to the game's fandom wiki, and yes, there's a fandom wiki for Ricochet with news as old as 12 years ago. Hey guys, y'all heard of this new song called Pumped Up Kicks? Ricochet is not only canon to the Half-Life/Portal universe, but takes place millions of years in the future after Earth has been destroyed. About 30 or so people managed to escape, which probably explains why this game has so few players, and I quote, "Because infinite space is boring, they created a game to fill the time, and it caught the attention of two beings, the corporeal and the incorporeal." And like, fuck yeah, dude, cheers, I'll drink to that. As I said before, you can't jump in Ricochet in a conventional manner. That's because part of the gameplay is balancing yourself around these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yeah, in typical Gold Source fashion, these are quite the slippery bunch, which admittedly makes for an enticing experience that rarely ever has much downtime, very much like a LAN party game you'd see back in the day. Moving around these things and memorizing their patterns is honestly a lot of fun. You can see the potential for a fun night with the boys here. But what is a night with the boys without the boys? This is the part where I invite my friends to play Ricochet, but apparently none of them have it, so the next best thing is replacing that Y with a T and calling it a day. Which means that, sadly, I had to tackle the online 200 ping nightmare in the find server section.
The hell? Oh, it's bots! It's bots, I can play with, Bowser dies.
Incredible experience. After more or less 10 minutes of Ricochet gameplay, I can say confidently that I was pleasantly surprised. My demeanor while going into the game and write the script for this segment altered slowly but surely, and by the end I was left feeling sad that this game flopped, instead of wanting to say it actually deserved to. To me, it's no surprise that a lot of people would really like to have a Ricochet too. I mean, hell, I would. It definitely seems like a fun experience, especially if you put in a more modern engine like Source. Just saying. I think this small, inconspicuous entry in the Valve lineup would serve more as a test to see what they were comfortable making. After all, it's not like Valve can't do multiplayer games, far from it, and Ricochet was them seeing how it could possibly play out in the future. Though I think that was maybe too niche of an idea to take off in a significant manner. However, despite undoubtedly being a flop when taking into account how much the other Valve games have sold, it's actually estimated that the number of Ricochet owners are somewhere in the 6-digit mark, with some websites even estimating that the amounts go into the millions. That's probably due, again, to the Valve Complete Pack, because when taking into comparison another game like, say, for example, Samurai Kagura X Full Versus, which has more or less the same amount of reviews and even less estimated owners, it still manages to place higher in the top sellers than Ricochet. Because no one is actually buying Ricochet. It's been a dead game ever since it was released, not really managing to live up to the same hype as Valve's other games, despite good ideas at a base level and a fun gameplay loop to have at a Discord party or something. But it serves as an interesting case as to how we can define what a flop for a company as big as Valve is, because despite being their black sheep amongst a line of killer games in the 2000s, so many developers out there would murder someone else to have the same numbers as Ricochet does. Those numbers. Not those. Those. Ultimately, it serves to remind us that if you don't succeed on your first attempt, just give up. Half-Life Deathmatch is really fucking fun. Seriously, if you have a group of friends who also happen to be Source fanatics but never stop to play Half-Life Deathmatch, you're missing out, man. Just trust me on that. You probably have the game in your library anyway, just give it a shot. But, uh-oh. What is this? There's like 3 deathmatch versions all made by Valve. Which one should I play? This one. Play this one. And maybe this one, but honestly I'd just stick this one. Deathmatch Classic is Valve's love letter to the very things that inspire their entire existence. Quake and Doom. Released in 2001, it has very much that early online feel that a lot of older players are certainly nostalgic about, because again, this game is basically Quake. Which ends up being its biggest detriment. Again, I love Half-Life Deathmatch. But specifically, I love Half-Life Deathmatch because of the Half-Life right next to the Deathmatch. I am first and foremost a Half-Life fan, and I assume this is what most people feel like when they think of Valve's Deathmatch games, because quite simply, Half-Life's weapons are really fucking fun to play with. Tower jumping, abusing grenades with the gravity gun, that's the sort of wacky stuff you expect from a regular lobby of HLDM or HL2DM. Deathmatch Classic, as the name might imply, is not a Half-Life game. DMC was released in that early golden age for Valve games where they were releasing banger after banger and Ricochet, Half-Life, Counter-Strike, Team Fortress, and so I guess they got tired of making bangers and Ricochet. So they decided to lay back for a while with a tribute to early multiplayer gaming, and honestly, good. Good for them. Go follow your dreams, Kip. I'm sure you'll be as big as me one day. But really, while Deathmatch Classic may not be as fondly remembered as Valve's other big releases from the time, or even its Deathmatch brethren from a few years after, I gotta commend the effort of creating a love letter to the thing that kickstarted online first-person shooters. That's good. That's really nice. Sadly though, for as nice as the thought behind the development must have been, at the end of the day it's still just Quake and the Gold Source engine, which in itself is a modded version of the Quake engine, so it basically just loops around into being Quake. Which, you know, is a fun game, and still played to this day. Hence why Deathmatch Classic has been basically deceased since release. DMC is, according to Wikipedia, famous for its inactive fanbase, peaking at 90 players back in December 2004, according to SteamDB, if you don't take into account the revival project orchestrated by the Deathmatch Classic Mania group in 2018, which increased the peak player count to a comfortable 629. Whoo! That's because, similar to Ricochet, I don't think many people after 2001 actively went hunting for Deathmatch Classic, but this time not because of a lack of focus in marketing. I could explain myself, but that requires effort, so I'll just let this comment I found illustrate precisely what I think in regards to Deathmatch Classic. It says, this game's community are just the people who feel bad for the game. LOL. The people who actually find the game a lot of fun are playing Quake. And yeah, makes sense. Thumbs up. I don't think it's a bad game, but there are so many more alternatives out there that actually have people playing them, not just in Quake, but in other deathmatch style games in general. And I think that apart from that, there's not much else to talk about with this one. It's kind of unfortunate, but who cares about that? Here's the game you're actually waiting for. Half-Life Source just makes me really sad. It's really just a sad tale with thankfully a proper happy ending, but still fucking depressing. If you're a stupid post-Source Gen Z like me, you probably agree with the opinion that Half-Life 1 is an amazing game. But that's not to say it aged all that well now, is it? The original Half-Life was released 25 years ago and still is regarded as one of the best games ever conceived, both as an outstanding achievement in game design and technology back in 1998 and a very good game overall in 2023. But simply put, the game is harsh to look at. It's dated. Really dated. The Gold Source engine has an undeniable charm which a lot of games, both by Valve and by fans, have exploited to death. However, even then, Gold Source only really lasted as a mainstay in the games industry for about 6 years, because in 2004, Valve outdid themselves and unveiled to the world
a straight white man.
Source. Guess they didn't think the whole gold thing was all that marketable anymore. Don't you think the names are inverted anyway? Gold Source is a much cooler name. Suck my balls. Source engine is the engine. It's almost as old as I am and still used to this very day, and it doesn't look like it's aged at all. Mostly. Half-Life 2 for a 2004 game will forever be one of the prettiest games ever. Portal and Portal 2's robotic, mechanical aesthetics, TF2's cartoony art style, and CSGO's graphics still stand the test of time and certainly will for as long as we continue to use Steam. With the immediate success of Source during its showcase in E3 2003, Valve already knew they had fans hooked, expecting the best of the best to be delivered right to their doorsteps. And so, as a little teaser, a little taste of what was to come, in June 2004, 5 months before Half-Life 2 and CSS, fans were blessed with...
Gordon, here you are.
Okay, I'm being extremely hyperbolic here, but at the same time not that much. Half-Life Source. Where do I even begin? Well, probably with the fact that in 2004, this was marketed as a digitally remastered version of the original. But wait, Paul, then why does it look exactly like the original Half-Life? Isn't that just silly? Well, yes, but also not entirely. See, the description for this game states exactly what they were looking for to enhance with this remaster. Specifically, it mentions physics simulation, okay, and enhanced effects. No real graphic talk here in the way of changing models and textures. Well then, that sounds mighty fantastic. I hear you scream out in pain. Ragdolls, better water, and better shooting, and you'd be right if you had an eye patch. This remaster is shoddy at best. It's always been like 70% done, which decayed over the years because of Source engine updates to a comfortable, I don't know, 50%. It's literally half finished. Can you imagine your 2004 self hearing about one of the best PC games of the past decade being remastered into an objectively better game with better graphics, models, lighting, gameplay, live backgrounds? Holy, what happened here? Half-Life Source is very disappointing, both nowadays, but especially in 2004. It's just a slightly altered version of the original, which was then pushed on the Steam page left to rot as Valve kept pushing updates to the engine, which in turn destroyed the game over the years. Every chapter in the game, every single iconic, thought-out chapter of the original Half-Life has some sort of unmistakable error or glitch, ranging from slightly noticeable like shiny floors and walls or the crowbar always making metallic sound. That's a good one. Or more egregious ones, like floating guards, floating helicopters, teleporting machines, invincible guards, invincible freemen, the fight with the Gonarch, like overall, kill zones not killing you, a banned Pokemon episode, broken storytelling moments, barnacle tongues not extending all the way down, and more. A lot more. Watch this video by BatBites for the full-ish list. The ragdolls are okay actually, but I still think they don't fit with the Ghost Swords aesthetic, which they basically left untouched by the way. The game still looks butt ugly nowadays, but then you step into this room in Office Complex and sweet mother of Jesus, what the fuck is that? That's the new shiny weather effects they want to wow everyone with. They are the same effects used in Half-Life 2, I think. They look like shit. Out of every single graphical thing to change in the game, they decided to go for the water. I think it's more noticeable in this part of We've Got Hostiles. Does this look at you? Now, no, changing the water to reflect the graphical update you're now capable of achieving with your brand new engine isn't a bad thing at all. The bad thing is that they decided to go only for the water, which results in this. Sore thumb. Okay, that's a lie, sort of. They were so kind as to change some lighting effects too. Note, however, that changing them doesn't really mean they always look nice. Some places look good. Some look like Minecraft without smooth lighting. The more calm and reasonable members of the community were okay with this game. After all, if you don't like it, just go play the original and quit being a pussy. And I can see some of the things that changed for the better, like the flashlight and the skyboxes. See, I can be slightly reasonable sometimes. However, the more vocal part of the fanbase, which would probably include me if I wasn't like one, were very well vocal about their distaste for the remaster. So vocal in fact that a tightly knit community of members gathered and decided to remotely, from their own homes, outdo Valve at their own job, starting in 2005. The result is this insignificant little game called Now, I love Black Mesa. I think, for me, personally, it's one of the best games ever. Honest to God, I swear on my mom. However, ever since it was released, even before the Zen version was added, people on the internet bickered about whether Black Mesa is a proper replacement for the original Half-Life. And being the annoying prick I am, I'm here to reignite that conversation. Except, not really. Here are my 2 cents. Black Mesa is in no way meant to be a replacement to the original Half-Life. The original game is far too great a work of fiction to be quote-unquote replaced, and I think the original team knew that. They weren't trying to replace their main source of inspiration, only presented to newer, younger audiences which were most likely to be turned off by HL1's potato graphics. Black Mesa is, however, supposed to replace Half-Life's source. And it does that really, really fucking well, because this is what people envisioned when a Half-Life 1 remaster on Source was announced, not this! I'm yet to make a proper video on Black Mesa, and there's only so many ways I can compliment it here without extending the video even longer, because we still have another game to talk about. All I want to say is, try thinking of it that way from now on. Black Mesa and Half-Life can coexist peacefully, one serving as a dated jewel which molded shooters that really started itself, and the other being a love letter by fans to bring that game to a newer audience. However, Black Mesa cannot coexist peacefully with Half-Life Source. Hyperbole, again, sure, but you get my point. Is Half-Life Source a bad game? No, not really. But most of that stems from the fact that it's just Half-Life through and through, with a lot of downgrades and errors, but just enough to not make the game completely unplayable. At the end of the day, this game is really, really fun, just for all the wrong reasons. We're reaching the end of our little journey here, and what better place to leave things at than with Valve's most recent flop, Artifact. This is the only game of this list I vividly remember seeing reactions to, live and all. Well, not live, but same month. I never actually played Dota 2 in my life and probably never will, but I can understand it's a massive game with a huge dedicated community, millions of dollars in revenue, and a sports scene so massive it may as well be its own planet. So when you, Valve, reveal a new Dota game and your community reacts like this, you know you fucked up in more than one way. That video I just showed you is from the International, an annual world championship held by Valve themselves, specifically for Dota 2, which I didn't actually know before and only makes this even fucking funnier. I really thought this was just like E3 or some shit. And like, Dude, it's literally only Dota enthusiasts here, and you still got booed, revealing a new Dota game. What the fuck? This video lives rent-free in my head. I think about it like every single day. If the tough gets going and I remember that I'm never going to be truly happy, I stop for a moment and think to myself that at least I'm not responsible for either creating this game or being on the receiving end of the most erection-deflating news of 2017. Yet, a year later, Artifact hit the virtual search shelves on Steam. Now, as I said, I never really played Dota, and I refuse to, out of principle, because I swore to myself to never touch a MOBA in my life. You can turn to me and say, oh, at least give it a shot, and I'll say, nah, and you'll ask why. And then I'll say that Pokemon Unite killed my grandma, okay? And then charge me for money for Eldegoss with 3 ribbons. So there, that's my excuse for potentially getting things wrong. I'm basing my explanations of game news and YouTube videos. Quality. So I didn't play Artifact for this video for a few reasons, apart from the game being dead. One is that I really don't like card games all that much, and if I were to play it, I'd probably be looking over countless flaws it has because I sincerely cannot identify them. 2 is that, again, I don't play Dota and I don't know anything about the universe. And 3, I mainly just want to focus on why this game failed, why a Valve game in a day and age where everyone was thirsty for a new Valve game flopped horribly, and I can do that without playing the game. Okay, fine, I'll fucking play Artifact. Jesus Christ. I didn't like it. Back on track, despite the immediate negative reception when the game was unveiled at the international hype inevitably and gradually built up within the following months. A new Valve game and all that. People outside the immediate receptors at TI were actually kind of excited for the game, and yeah, at a glance I can understand why. I don't understand jack diddly of what's going on here, but goddamn, the game looks great, it sounds amazing, and it has some fantastic lively animations. You know what else has that? Overwatch 2. Mostly because the game is just Overwatch 1.5, but anyway. For this colossal stinker, Valve tag teamed with a little someone called Richard Garfield, the creator of Magic the Gathering. Some guy. The development of Artifact is really something. It started all the way back in late 2014, according to Wikipedia. You know what else was released in 2014? Hearthstone. Gabe stated that originally Artifact wasn't supposed to be based on Dota 2, saying it was a very late decision taken by the team, but I really want to believe that he's lying and this was just made to capitalize on the success of Hearthstone and failed horribly. Surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly, the critical response, the journalistic response to Artifact was actually pretty good. But then again, what do game journalists know? Because mostly everyone else was not happy. The game, well, both versions of the game are now free, but at release, they weren't. The game was initially priced at $20, okay, seems good for a Valve game, but also featured heavy reliance on good old microtransactions, and not even the cosmetic kind like CSGO or TF2, which are just cosmetic and don't impact your overall skill, supposedly. Try hitting a headshot on this guy, I bet you can't. But the kind that made players drop the game immediately, under the premise that it was pay to win. The initial player count of 60,000 dropped to 1,500, 95% of its initial number in a matter of 2 months. And by 2020, the game was already struggling to peak at 100 players. The monetization system was mostly described as confusing by players, which didn't really bode well for a game which was competing with the likes of Hearthstone, Magic Arena, and even Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, all games with free options for obtaining cards and building decks, allowing for more fleshed out and accessible competitive play. This in particular reminds me a lot of what I learned a few years ago about competitive FIFA, especially how the financial barrier of entry for a meta ultimate team is like insane. Or was, I don't know, watch this video to see what I mean. Let me repeat myself. The next big Valve game, the next major release from one of the biggest, most historically innovative game companies in history, was a pay-to-win card game with a ridiculously high learning curve. Supposedly, since all I have to go off of now are 5-year-old reviews because, surprise, the game was shelved! And also they made every card in the game available without any to purchase, yay! Valve gave up on supporting Artifact more or less 3 years into its life, around 2021, when Artifact 2.0 was cancelled and the game went free to play. And ever since, the game has effectively died. It remains available for download on the Steam store with 2 different versions, the top one, Foundry, supposed to be the game's revival in 2019, before Gabe fucking Newell himself stated that continuing to support Artifact was a futile task. And yeah, no fucking wonder. So ever since, although you can still play the game, there have been no significant updates. Valve not updating their games in a long time, what I consider basically leaving it to metaphorically die, is nowadays a rather common occurrence. Left 4 Dead 2 and Team Fortress 2 players will be glad to tell you their stories, but these are established popular games which had a decade or more to develop. Valve can afford to let them be by themselves because they, in particular TF2, generate so much fucking money. For a game, not even just a game, a Valve game, to have development halted on it after a mere 3 years. I mean, I don't even know what to say anymore. It's actually leaving me speechless. So I'm stopping here. I'm not doing this anymore. Let's not also forget the invasion of artifacts category on Twitch for people to stream memes and porn. I was actually there for that one. It was a bit insane looking back. So with no new updates, no major events, and more negative reviews than positive ones, which I think is a first for any Valve game, Artifact stands this day as their biggest flop yet. Hopefully the last one too. I kinda, don't want to say that again. Okay, just a little, I think would be kind of fun. It's fitting that we saved the best for last. Because yeah, Ricochet never got that many players, Half-Life Source is outshined by a fan remake, Alien Swarm and Day of Defeat are criminally underrated, and Deathmatch Classic is basically just funny Quake. But none of these can even compare to the colossal shit stain that is Artifact. This right here is Valve's biggest disappointment, their biggest ever failure, the one which solidified their reputation as a company that simply did not give a shit about anything anymore, other than chasing new trends in an attempt to make even more money. Until, of course, next year, when Half-Life Alyx was announced and eventually hits the shelves, blows everyone away, and so people forget about Artifact even harder. And yep, that's how it's been for the past 5 years. Artifact peaks at less than 100 players daily, Valve makes an effort to scrub it from the minds of everyone, and that's that. Analyzing flops and why they happen is always a fun thing to do. It's even more fun when they're flops from a company as renowned as the owners of Steam themselves. Maybe I'll do more of these in the future with other companies, who knows? There sure is a lot to talk about. For now, I'm gonna go back to play my favorite Valve game ever, Artifact.